Are we heading into a real estate market crash? Has it already begun? Should you be investing in real estate or should you be waiting on the sidelines for the prices to crash? Get it right and you can make lots of money. Get it wrong and it's doom. You know it. Let's get to the truth. I'm Scott Todd and welcome to the channel that's here to help you become a better investor and make more money and more importantly, get more time. If you look around YouTube or Wall Street Journal or anywhere else, you will see that everyone is talking about the real estate market crash. I mean, some people have already declared that the crash has already started. And there's a lot of data out there. I mean, I watched a video the other day and someone was saying, well, the thunderstorms are out there. But before we jump to conclusions, let's look into the data. Let's make an informed decision. And the first thing that people will cite for the impending crash is the whole mortgage forbearance thing. Remember, under the CARES Act that was passed in 2020, any borrower with a government-backed mortgage can enter a forbearance plan that adds the overdue payments to the loan at the end at 0% interest. So you can just say, hey, I can't make the payments right now. And they say, the bank and the lender say, no problem, go ahead and we'll tack it on to the end. No interest. Now, there's a lot of private lenders that are offering the same thing because the CARES Act only covered government-backed mortgages. But a lot of the private lenders also did the same thing. They did it with mortgages, they did it with credit cards, they did it with auto loans. And during 2020, about 7 million people, 7 million borrowers, or about 8% of the borrowers, mortgage borrowers, entered a forbearance program during the pandemic. Now, people will say, oh, hold on a minute. You see, it's like 2008 all over again. 7 million people behind on their mortgages. It's going to get really bad. But there's something important to notice here, that in 2008, if you wanted to go for a forbearance, you had to qualify for it. So when people compare the number of forbearances that were given in 2020 to the number that were given in 2008, the number looks way bigger because in 2020, all you had to do is ask for it. You want, you get. No questions asked. You can get the forbearance program under the CARES Act. But in 2008, you had to qualify for it. So the numbers are going to look skewed to the higher. But something important, remember, 7 million people asked for forbearance. But at the end of last year, at the end of 2020, 3 million borrowers remained in that program. So 4 million people came off of the forbearance program. And of the 3 million people on forbearance, well, 2 million of them are not making mortgage payments. Literally, 2 million are not making it. So when we look at the big overall theme here, 2 million people at the end of 2020, out of 7 million who asked for forbearance, they were not making their mortgage payments. And the reality is that the 2 million people that were on forbearance not making their payments at the end of 2020, well, they may never start to make their payments. Those 2 million borrowers, they could easily hit the foreclosure markets. And as you know, when it hits the foreclosure markets, oh man, it's 2008 all over again, right? But see, the thing is that the 2 million people that are not making their payments at the end of last year, a large percentage of them probably were unemployed or underemployed. And some economic data came out today that basically said that in February, 916,000 jobs were created. So think about that for a minute. Of the people, let's assume that the people that are not paying their mortgage, or a large percentage of those people, of those 2 million people not paying their mortgages, is because they don't have a job. And in February alone, we added 916,000 jobs. So how many people of the 2 million got jobs in February? Well, we don't have the exact count yet because we don't have updated data. But is this whole forbearance thing really an issue? Is that what's going to bring the housing market down in 2020? 2021? Well, maybe, but there's more data that we have to look at, because remember, what caused the crash, or causes any crash, is when the supply of something is more than the demand. So clearly, flooding millions of homes into the foreclosure market or into the market via foreclosure, that's definitely going to upset the equilibrium. But we have to also look at some of the other data before we jump to conclusions. So let's go to the other piece of data that people look at. The other piece of data that they cite is, oh my gosh, look at all the money coming out of homes through cash out refis. Now, if you're not familiar with it, let's talk about it. A cash out refi is when a homeowner or a property owner refinances their property. They'll get, because the values have likely gone up and their equity has grown, they will say to the bank, hey, bank, I want you to refinance the property, but at the same time, I'd like to get some of my equity back out of it. And what sends people frantically thinking into, thinking like, here comes the crash again, was that in 2005, this whole practice of refinancing your home, taking money back out of it like it was an ATM, it was like the Wild West. I mean, people would do this nonstop. It seemed like a lot of people were just using their homes as piggy banks or ATMs. The value would rise and take the money out. Value would rise, take the money out, go buy. I mean, everybody was living the dream in 2005. And the property owners who were doing this just kept tapping out the refi machine. But in 2020, the U.S. homeowners, they cashed out $152 billion. They took $152 billion out of their homes. And that number freaks people out because that represents a 42% increase from the prior year. And we've taken out the most money out of our homes since 2007. But check this out. Look at this graphic from the Wall Street Journal. This shows you how much money was really taken out. You'll see in 2020, $152 billion was taken out through cash out refinances. But let's go back. Let's rewind the machine all the way back to 2005 and 2006, where this was at its peak. The 2006 number was $320 billion. $320 billion was taken out of the housing market. Now, that number, $320 billion, that's insane. That's a lot of money taken out of the housing market. But when you compare it to what happened last year, what was taken out last year, it's nowhere near in comparison. The graph of the data really shows what was happening in 2020 versus what was happening in 2005. Now, we can't stop there. We have to keep digging. We have to get into our time machine, get into our DeLorean, and go back to 2005. Because in 2005, something crazy was happening. It's like this. Let's say that in 2005, we wanted to get a mortgage. No problem. We could call up the bank or walk into the bank and go, hey, Mr. Banker, I want a mortgage. And the banker would look at you. And honestly, the only criteria that they had, I know I'm exaggerating here, but the only criteria that they really had was, hey, here's a mirror. Can you fog it up? Because if you could fog up the mirror, pretty much you could get a mortgage. It was like everybody had a mortgage. They were passing out mortgages like people pass out candy on Halloween. It was crazy. Everyone had a mortgage. Maybe they had 2, maybe you had 5 properties. Everybody was buying everything in sight because, well, we were partying like it was 1999, baby. You see, the thing is that you could go get a house, you could go get a mortgage, the prices were going up. You could then take the equity from that first house that you would get. You take the equity, you go to the bank, go, I got the money for the second house. They're like, no problem. You do it again. Rinse and repeat. And then what would happen is some people were going crazy. They had 10 mortgages, 5 mortgages, whatever. The numbers were crazy. And the banks didn't help us out either. Because you know why? Because they wanted to make it so easy. They gave everybody teaser rates. Man, you had this low rate for like the first 6 months. And then after that, guess what happened? Hey, your payment's going up, man, because your interest rate went up. All of a sudden, we couldn't tap out of the money anymore because the housing prices didn't keep growing. Nothing grows forever. We all know that. The housing, we couldn't take the money out. The interest rates were going up on people. They couldn't pay them. Woo! And all of a sudden, you have what becomes a ton of homes onto the market. That's what caused the crash in 2005, 2006 that resulted in the financial crisis of 2008. That's what happened. So now let's go to 2020. Let's get back in the DeLorean and go back to 2020. In 2020, who is it that's taking money? Who is it that's refinancing their homes? Who is it? We got to go into dig into the details again, because what we're going to find is that the median credit score of those people that are refinancing their homes in 2020, well, it's pretty close to 800. Think about that for a minute. It's almost 800, and a FICO score of 800. That means that the people who are refinancing their homes in 2020, well, they are the same people who have shown responsibility with their money. You just don't get an 800 credit score by being irresponsible and, I don't know, buying more than what you can afford. The people, presumptively, the people that have an 800 credit score, well, they tend to be pretty responsible with their money. Let's look at this graph. So here it is. This again is from the Wall Street Journal. This is showing us if we come back down and we start to look in 2005 and 2006 and the party days, this blue down here, the light blue, well, these are the number of mortgages that were issued with people who had basically subpar credit. You get it. Look at how many mortgages were there. But now let's fast forward back to 2020. Look at how many people are refinancing that have lower credit, the lower credits, that's under 720, according to this graph, versus the people that are refinancing. And look at the last quarter of 2020. Just look at that. Look at how much money came out to the people that are extremely responsible with their money and their credit. That's an important piece right there. So based on that chart, we can see that the cash out refi and the whole refinance thing is not really an issue. So people love to talk about this whole refinance thing. I don't see it. It's just not there because the people that are refinancing, they've shown that they're pretty responsible. But we also now need to transition because a lot of people will say, oh, the inventory, the prices are skyrocketing. In 2005, the prices skyrocketed. Oh, they did skyrocket in 2005 and 2006. Prices were going up like crazy. And so again, people like to say that because the prices are going up, it's going to lead to a bubble. But here's the reality. You see, less people are selling their homes right now. And that's what's created the supply issue. So when we go back and we start to think about the inventory, what we need to do is we need to look at what our current inventory is. And I'm sure if you're watching this, I'm sure you're aware that there is a shortage of real estate listings in America. The facts are that according to Redfin, at the end of February, there were less than 650,000 homes for sale in America. When we go back to 2016, which just seems like a couple of months ago, when we go back to 2016, look at how many homes were on the market. Look at the supply right there. Almost 1.9 million homes were on the market in 2016. And guess what? The market didn't crash because there was 1.9 million homes on the market. Today, with less than 650,000 homes, we have a lot of room. We have a lot of room to absorb more inventory. So now let's think about the 2 million people. Let's go back to where we started. The 2 million people that are not paying their mortgages. One, we know that the economy is adding jobs. So we know that as people begin to work again, there's no immediate need for them to make the payments that they missed because it's been tacked on to the end. All they have to do is resume their payments. And presumably, most people want to do the right thing. I mean, I know that that's not always the case, but of the 2 million people, if they're able to pay their mortgage, I'm sure that the majority of them will. Now, that said, with 2 million people not paying their mortgage, we also know that a percentage of them will not begin to pay the mortgage because they can't. And then what will happen is those homes will go through the foreclosure process. But think about where we are today. 650,000 homes on the market today as of February. The high that we've seen just in the last few years was 1.9 million. So we know that there is room in the inventory to absorb potential foreclosures. Think about it. If people started not being able to pay their mortgage and the foreclosures began to get implemented, there's room there. And what we also know is that the housing market crash actually started in 2005. Prices started getting soft in 2005. And we really didn't feel the effects of this until 2008. So think, it's not an immediate thing. It's not like all of a sudden the switch flips and it's gone. It's a slow progression in real estate. It's a slow progression. So even if the moratorium on foreclosures ended today, the process to even begin the foreclosure process on these delinquent mortgages is going to take months, if not years. It's going to take a while to even get started because they have to give notice and do all this other stuff. And that means that in 2021, we are not going to see a flood of foreclosed properties hit the market. Not this year, and maybe not even next year. It could, but I don't think it will. So are we in a bubble? No way. You see, the price appreciation that we're seeing today, well, granted, that's not sustainable. We will not continue to see that. The market will work itself back into a more realistic growth program. But that said, I think you really have to look at this and say, based on the facts that we see today, the market is not going to crash in 2021. It's not going to crash for some time. And I really want you to think about this as well. Dave Ramsey basically he said, you know what? And in his entire career, he became a realtor in 1978. He said since 1978 to present, he's only seen the real estate market take a nosedive across the entire country one time, and that was in 2008. We're not going to see it in 2021. We're not going to see it in 2022. There might be certain markets that bubble up, but for the most part, you got to keep growing, keep investing, and keep building your passive income. That's what I think. Let me know what you think. And if you enjoyed this video, check out this video right here, and I'll see you in the next video.